Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We got a good one. Hopefully you guys can kind of correlate with this or resonate with it. But we are going to do a video on how to tear down a engine, basically like a core engine. Now, this engine got shipped to us by one of our customers out in Hawaii. We are doing basically like an 07 engine build where it's Street Fighters, cast block 6.7, no sleeves, Molly pistons, and we're gonna push it to the limit. So we're gonna set them up the exact same way that we do for the 07. The engine just got here. We got a ton of his parts. Let me show you actually this guy's parts. I dig his parts list. Some of it's not all here yet, but we have Wagler Street Fighters. We have a D&J head, fluid dampener with the max power kit. We have a Cummins oil cooler. We have, I believe this is a Hamilton 188 220 cam, Hamilton tappets. We have the Wagler Street Fighters, obviously, gasket kits. He wanted to reuse the pistons, but after we got to talking, we're not going to do that. We have Molly bearings. But anyway, we also talked him into new rocker arms because this was like an early 07.5, 08. So it has the plastic rocker arms. And here's his engine block. Obviously, he didn't ship the head because we already have the D&J head. Shipped it from Hawaii. So there's a little bit of surface rust on like the block surface here, but honestly not bad. I believe this one drove just fine. Like it ran and drove, but we're looking right now. Don't mind that bolt. I took it out to bolt it to the stand, but very good cross hatching on here. And like I said, a little bit of surface rust just from the ocean. So we're going to go ahead and tear this thing down. I need to get it ready to go to New Performance Auto. So I'll get this thing torn down. And once I get it all torn down, I'm going to show you guys kind of the things I look for when I tear down a core motor or I tear down a customer's motor before we do a build, just to kind of see like where all the bearing clearance is good. Do we have any ring butting? Do I think it'll hone out at standard? Is it standard? What's the crank measure at? Because you never know, especially with these motors. I mean, unless you buy the truck brand new, you'll never know. I mean, people hide things all the time. But let's get this thing torn down. Basically, it'll go oil pan, oil pickup tube, block stiffener. From there, we will punch out all the rods, pistons, obviously together. Then we will take the damper off. We'll take the fan clutch, fan hub assembly off. From there, pop the front cover off, pull the cam out, drop all the tappets down. We will obviously take the adapter plate, flex plate off this thing, and then pull the crank out, and it'll be pretty much ready for Steve's. We'll pull the J-Jets out obviously as well, but let me get you guys set up here. We'll just get this thing torn apart. It's been draining all weekend, so hopefully it doesn't make a mess, but that's also, since we have clean engines and trannies in there, we're gonna tear this thing down out here because it really doesn't matter since everything's getting machined. now, 24 short minutes later, we have it like this. Crank's about ready to come out, tap its J-jets, and that's it. So kind of went a little out of order. It was just the way the engine was turned. There's no wrong or right way. You'll see as it comes apart a certain way. We got all his pistons. This was definitely a truck that had the emissions on it for quite some time. There is just a ton of soot buildup at the top here. And judging from it's a Hawaiian truck, I'd say either that or a lot of idle time. But none of the rings were stuck, which is nice. His oil pan got dented, so you guys saw me trying to fight turning it. Cam looked really good. All his rod bearings, fantastic for, you know, just OEM. Oil pump looks good. We'll replace that, obviously. His cam, definitely, I mean, it's ran, but it's not horrible. We could definitely probably turn this into a blank into something. You guys can see here, though, we do have some pretty decent wear on that lobe surface. But again, nothing that would have made this truck run bad or anything like that. But it's kind of interesting to see what happens to these cams after years and years and years. What's crazy is like his cam retainer here. We can reuse that. Now, I don't know if this customer wants us to, but if he does, awesome. If he wants a new one, I will keep this one for one of my engine builds because it is still in really good shape. The only thing on his cam that we're reusing is his gears, so no worries there. But everyone always is curious why when you change a cam, you usually change the tappets, and you can clearly see all of the wear that has happened on this cam over many miles, many idle hours, stuff like that. Moving over to his tappets, you guys can kind of see down there. I mean, not terrible, but you could definitely see, especially on this one, like a very distinct pattern. Now onto his crank. We are gonna have to have that really awkward phone call. There is a huge groove right here, and it's not just the oil stain. Like, that is really grooved here and really grooved here. Like, catch your fingernail grooved. The rest of these, like this one, you know, it's just oil. This one, like, it is a groove with your finger. What that means is probably some dirt, debris, lack of maintenance somewhere along the line of this engine. Like I said, this is an early third gen, so even if it was 09, 2022, 13 years old, so I'm not putting it off on this owner. Anybody. Could have just been a bad day, but debris went through that bearing. The bearing has a huge gouge in it, and the crank has enough on your finger. I don't even have to mic this to tell you that this crank is not going to clean up standard. And on a build of this horsepower caliper, man, I mean, I'll give them the option, but I'm going to highly recommend a non-undercut crank. So basically, to fix that, you machine the crank down. Usually it's 10,000ths. And basically you run a thicker bearing to make up for the lost diameter of the crank journal. So in a nutshell, you make this journal smaller, but the distance between the block and the main cap, that diameter stays the same. So you use a thicker, so if the bearing's this thick when it's standard, it'll be that thick, obviously dramatized for this video, that thick to take up the space. Oil cooler came apart. None of his main caps really fretted, nothing like that. So like I said, block in great shape. Definitely a good candidate for, you know, the 1,000 horsepower plus realm. Crank, not so much. So I'm gonna, again, I guess the unfortunate part of owning your own business or whatever, you got to make those awkward phone calls. But at the end of the day, like, we take it apart. That's why we inspect it. This crankshaft, unfortunately, will not clean up standard, which really sucks because these cranks are getting really expensive now. We'll see what Steve has in inventory. See if we can't find a lucky deal on eBay. Maybe somebody on Facebook Marketplace, whatever. Try to get this guy a new crank, used crank, whatever crank, just a standard 6.7 crank. So yeah, that's kind of what I look for. For anyone wondering what the difference between a one piece and a two piece is, so you guys see here, this part will actually come off on each side. You guys see the tangs there? One right there, one there, one there. And there you go. It'll pop off like that. And that's the big difference with like the H bearings, or most of the Molle bearings really. They have a one-piece main bearing. This is the thrust bearing, one-piece design. This is the OEM three-piece design. As in a nutshell, what you're looking for is you're looking for a block that doesn't have holes in it, right? That's a given. I try to steer away from cabin chassis blocks. I try to get 25, 3500 on highway trucks, regular light duty pickups. Mileage really doesn't matter to me all that much. I guess if you had a engine that had 1200 horsepower for 100,000 miles, I'd probably steer away from that. But most engines I find, you'll see them with like a second jet swap kit on, but you pop the injectors out, they're making like 600, 650 horsepower. If they want to tell their friends 800, that's fine. But I would say at least 98% of people on the road with these engines that are selling them, they were probably pretty close to stock power, intake, tune, delete, stuff like that. I always try to find ones that have the emissions still on them, just because I know there's a definite horsepower cap when you have a truck with the emissions on. If they're deleted, that's fine too. But like I said, the premium blocks for me, anything under 200,000 emissions on. I try to steer clear of like wrecked ones, because in my head I just think all of that, it's physics. Anything in motion has inertia. When you hit something with your truck and the engine gets shoved forward, I always worry about stress cracks in the crank. That's just how whatever. But that's what I look for really, is just, and I hate Midwest, Northeast, Northern state blocks. Like when they're rusty and crusty, it sucks. You have hours wire wheeling them to get them clean. The hardware usually breaks on the oil pan getting them out. Like they're a nightmare. So I try not to buy anything that looks rusty, or if the truck's just a rusty piece of junk, I don't buy that. And then I take them apart, measure them. This one, pretty awesome. It had Cummins pistons in it. It had STD stamped in the top. Therefore, it's a standard bore. You kind of just wiggle the skirt in there, and I know that that's standard bore. You run your finger through all the cylinders. If nothing catches your fingernail, chances are it's probably going to clean up just fine, but double check that. On the really high mileage ones, you might want to get a dial bore gauge and check for taper and out of round. Basically, the piston will start to kind of make a cone shape. If this is the top of the cylinder, it'll cone out, and it'll go out around. That's one of the things to look for. Fires don't bother me. Overheated don't bother me, because you're going to do all the surfacing of the head and block, so it really doesn't matter. And yeah, I always stay away from blocks that have been rebuilt. You never know how good the machine work was, anything like that. So obviously if it came from like a professional shop, I wouldn't worry about it. But I always get pretty nervous with like the Jasper reman engines, and like Mopar reman engines, or I did it myself reman engine. Like those always scare me, and I usually just walk away. I always do prefer it if I just buy like a block and a crank, or block crank head, or it's already apart and I just bring my little measuring tools and I check it all. But that's how I do it. Anyway, I hope this helped you guys understand like kind of how they tear down. They tear down really quick, especially with the heads off. Fully dressed to this point, it takes me about an hour. When the head's off, it takes me about a half hour. And now what I'll do is I'll sort through all the parts, throw them in a box. If it's your first time or you're new at this or anything, I highly recommend Ziploc bags. You label them, where the bolts came from, stuff like that. I'll be honest, I've taken so many apart, put so many together, I know where all these bolts go, so I just kind of throw them all in a bin. As long as I don't lose any bolts, I'm good. I know where they all go. And yeah, I mean, that's really it. That's what I look for. This is a pretty good candidate, minus that crank that no longer is good, but we'll deal with that. Anyway, guys, hopefully you like this one. Drop a comment down below if you have any more tech series videos you'd like to see. Right now, I'm currently working on something. I don't know if it'll come to the channel or not, but I am working on something. Hopefully, it'll be a little bit different, a little more exciting. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Current update, still waiting for our deck plate from New Performance, which I know Steve is swamped, so it is what it is. We won't make Rocky Top with this unit here, unfortunately. But we will be there to help out Ethan Patterson with his truck. So that'll be fun. We're still going to the sled pull. This video goes up Friday. We'll already be on our way to Ohio. But again, Plain City, Ohio, Saturday, 30 street trucks from, I think, across the country at this point showing up. It'll be a lot of fun. And yeah, the other thing, I went up to Fire Punk this past weekend, hung out with Cody Fisher, saw his new Fox Body tube chassis, freaking sweet. And we also ordered quite a bit of fabrication stuff, just stuff I saw him use that looked cool, convenient, made jobs easier. And once all that stuff kind of gets in, I'll give you a little rundown of kind of like what I saw from Cody that I definitely want to add to my arsenal and stuff like that. But anyway, drop your text series, what you guys want to see. The ECMs through the years one, I could probably do that one. I saw that one commented. If I get enough people that want that, we could definitely cover all the different common rail ECMs, harnesses, truck gears, stuff like that. And hopefully I see some of you guys out at either Rocky Top or the Fire Punk Pull. Subscribe if you are not already, guys. Huge thank you for everyone that ordered merch. We are all caught up. I appreciate it. Website's still live. If you want it, cool. If you don't, that's fine too. We do have a new t-shirt design that's coming. It'll be Team Never Quit. It's kind of what I beat my drum to, and I hope that's kind of what I'm known for in this industry, is just no matter how bad it is, no matter how much we blow up, we're never going to quit. Anyway, guys, subscribe, like, drop that comment. And as always, I'll catch y'all on the next one.